The story of a person who was punched on the London Underground is shocking. But of course, the focus of that story should be as much on Sadiq Khan, on the mayor's responsibility, as it is on the hurt and the danger that was that is emphasised. The Transport for London falls squarely under the purview of the mayor, and it's not his peripheral duty, it's not decorative, it's almost certainly not optional. But increasingly, one might observe Sadiq Khan, Sir Sadiq Khan, has tried to straddle the straddle the international stage, one often offering frequent pronouncements on international events. And Trump figures in his pronouncements, climate changes, Gaza, global diplomacy. But really, he should be focusing, first of all, on what he's elected to do. Important issues these are. But when the mayor tours the world of global politics, it seems the intercoms of Green Park have fallen silent. And Miss Winter, who suffered this ordeal, exposes not simply a failed help point, but a broader cultural malaise, a system that doesn't answer when called, that fails to prioritise everyday security, that expects the public to tolerate it quietly, that puts us all on hold. Let's take a moment to consider the facts. The intercom at Oxford Circus didn't function. Why not? Miss Winter was forced to go upstairs just to obtain a mobile signal. No staff member came to her assistance for over 30 minutes. Only after she took to TikTok and LinkedIn, amassing over 1 million views, did TfL and the mayor's office truly engage. The police later informed her that her attacker matched the description of a man who had shortly afterwards kicked a child. Well, that child never needed to be kicked. That child should have been able to walk the underground safely. Instead, a dangerous person was left to do further damage, and that's the problem. If the emergency response had worked, if the intercom had worked, the second assault might have been prevented. To be fair, the mayor's office issued a statement expressing regret. The British Transport Police have since made an arrest, and the TfL Commissioner Andy Lord has apologised personally. But apologies, however heartfelt, are not enough. The system that fails in a moment of violence is not a system fit for purpose. And Miss Winter has rightly called for an urgent audit of all help points across London Underground. A 2024 audit by the Office of Rail and Road already found that a quarter of help points on the National Rail network were not functioning properly, and that statistic is a scandal in its own right, and now it has a human face. So this incident should provoke three responses. First, a full and transparent audit of all TfL emergency intercoms and help points, not next quarter, not next year, but immediately. Second, a renewed focus on frontline safety, including the visible staff presence on platforms, especially at major interchanges, should be established. Third, and most importantly, a recommitment from the mayor to the core duties of his office, namely to make London safe, accessible and functional for those who live here in London. We must resist the temptation to treat safety as a communication strategy or as a branding exercise. It's a public obligation, and that obligation was unmet on March the 27th. Certainly the recent times when I've been through London, I've felt unsure and unsafe in the tube, and therefore I haven't used it. I've literally made a habit of walking from the station that I arrive at to my whatever my destination is, and that generally involves a sort of 1 hour walk across London early in the morning, which I find in some ways quite bracing and quite pleasant, but I'm only doing it because I feel nervous about the security in the tube, and I felt that for some time. And as I expect to be returning to London very shortly, I think this is a story which, for me, has personal significance. I'm quite interested to see someone has called out something that I've felt uncomfortable about for some years now, certainly since the pandemic. But it wasn't just the pandemic that's made me think twice about getting on the metro. And I'm not averse to metros. I've done it here in Istanbul, and I don't feel that same sense of sinking anxiety. We need to resist the temptation to treat safety as a communication strategy or a branding exercise. It's a public obligation, and that obligation was unmet. And, it doesn't matter how often one repeats that line, that's the key to this story. It's not about sending out more apologies to the person who was assaulted. It's not about really pointing the finger of blame and saying Sadiq Khan is absolutely to blame. The issue is that this is a failure. And a failure means you can't trust it. And if you can't trust the safety of the London Underground, why would anyone use it? The story isn't about social media. It isn't about political optics or whether one person had a verified account or a million followers. It's about what happens to a voiceless person in a city that no longer seems to listen. And actually what happens in London, in the Underground, is mirrored and paralleled by the way the authorities, whether these be the people who manage a phone helpline, or whether they be literally people in ministries or supposedly in ministries across the United Kingdom. When you want help, it isn't available. And you can be left on hold for hours. For hours. When someone presses a help button in fear and no one answers, this isn't a technical glitch. This is a moral failure. And if our mayoral leadership cannot prioritise that, then it's high time for Londoners to press their emergency button and get rid of him. And this time, I think we should expect to be answered. Whether this is the Mayor of London, whether this is the Prime Minister, whether this is the Home Secretary, and there's a lot of questions about the Home Secretary and her responsibilities, as there should have been a lot of questions about the previous Home Secretaries, Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, Amber Rudd, and particularly Theresa May, and Blunkett. I think our understanding of what the responsibility of those who hold office precisely to provide security, I think there's a question about what that responsibility is. That responsibility is to provide security. And if the systems which are supposedly in place prove to be an illusion, there is no security.